Okay, Scivis students, in this Photoshop assignment, we're going to be looking at combining two images in a bit more of a nuanced way than in the last assignment with Vignette. So I have here a roller coaster, and my second image is a student in a laundry basket sledding. And basically, I'm going to put the sledder on the roller coaster. So similar to how we did in the vignette, I'm going to go ahead and select the part that I'm interested in here. And I'm going to drag it up and into the other image. And we're going to do some quick alignment bits before we actually get to editing the image. I'm going to hit Control-T and transform this, this layer. I'm going to transform it down a little bit. And it's okay for me that they won't line up perfectly. And again, I'm going to hit Control-T, and I'm going to flip the horizontal. Please remember that whenever you're done transforming, you hit Enter so that those handles go away. And I may eventually sort of tilt him a bit, but for now this works. I'm going to go ahead and zoom so I can be closer on our guy. And what we're going to do here is we're going to selectively erase parts of this. Now, you could come in here and try to use your eraser tool and get rid of all the parts that you don't like. You know, and here I am holding it down and getting rid of it. And you could do it that way. But the problem with that is the first time I slip and do this, I either have to help I undo or have to start all over because I've just erased part of my person and I don't have him to get back here. So I'm going to step back here twice. So what we actually want to do is do something that we sort of did at the end of our vignette, which is we want to make what's called a layer mask. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lasso tool here and make sure that you reset the feather to 0 because we don't want a fade out like we had in the last assignment. And I'm going to do a quick rough outline of our guy. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want to cut into him or whatever you're using in your image. But you want to get close so that you can start to sort of get rid of some of these extra pixels here. So here I have him selected, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to click this button that we have again under our layers, and it's the layer mask button. And what you can do is you can see here it makes a layer mask. Now, if you're curious about what a layer mask is, I'm going to hit Control-0 and zoom out. Those Control+ and Control-0 and Control- from Illustrator still work in Photoshop. I'm going to hold the Alt button, Alt, and I'm going to click this layer mask. And you can see this is what a layer mask is. And it's just a black and white image. And basically what it's telling Photoshop is, hey, everywhere where you see white, show that layer. Everywhere you see black, don't show that layer. To get out of this, I'm just going to click back here on the layer. Now, keep in mind, so this is basically a black and white layer that tells us information about this. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to grab the paintbrush tool. Okay, and I'm going to make sure down here in my Photoshop toolbar that I click right here to reset my colors and make sure that my base colors are black and white, solid black and white. And over here you can see I have this tiny little box that's around my layer. I'm going to click on the layer mask so it's on the mask. And what this does is this means I'm now painting on the layer mask. Okay, if I was on this box, you can see I'm painting on him with black. I don't want to do that. On the layer mask, if I do this with black, you notice it erases him. If I click my switch so that I'm drawing with white, it doesn't erase him. In fact, it unerases the image. It's like I'm painting with a photo that's there. It's a good way to freak your parents out. You can be like, look at how much of a great painter I am. But the point is, now with the black as the dominant paint color, I can come in here and I can paint alongside him and get rid of all this background part. And the nice part is if I slip and erase his hand, I just switch back to white, and I paint his hand back in. So with the black paintbrush, I'm going to paint all around him. And when you get into places where it's too small, please remember your bracket keys that let you make your brush bigger and smaller. And once again, the bracket keys are next to the P. One other thing is if you have bits that are straight, you can click with the brush and then hold shift and do a next click, and it will draw from one point to another. Sometimes it helps to turn off the background so you can actually see how much of it is his if you have colors that are similar in the background, like I do. Usually it's okay if you accidentally erase a little bit of it on the edge, but you don't want to go too far because then it starts to lose its realism. If you have to, remember you can always zoom, though keep in mind if you go too far you get this pixel grid, which is sometimes distracting. I like to turn it off. Show pixel grid so that I don't have to look at it. I'm going to come in here and get rid of this bit. I'm individually clicking right now so that I can easily undo if I need to. Let's zoom out and see how I'm doing. It's getting there. He still looks kind of fuzzy on his head, and his hand is definitely messed up here. Let's get this. Again, the brush tool. I'll go really small in here so I can get this bit. I'm not confident this is how that's supposed to look, but if I need to redo it, I can always bring it back with white. Yeah, something looks a little off there. That said, we're getting pretty close. I'm gonna go a little tighter around his hair here. Alright, let's turn our background back on. You can see I have a slight white edge here. That's one of the fastest ways that you can see, oh, that was photoshopped. So you often want to try to make sure to get that white edge out of there. I got this bit around the back of his head. You could spend some time to make sure yours is much more accurate. My example doesn't have to be perfect. You just saw me do that trick with shift again. I'm sort of drawing with it like lines now. It's much faster. Now here I have him. We're going to go back to view actual size or 100% so I can see how we're doing. I'm going to hit Control T. And you notice if I rotate, it will turn the layer mask with us. So I'm going to rotate it a bit so that he's riding on the roller coaster, and we'll shrink down a little bit. If you're using a person, one thing you could always do to add to it is add a nice shadow. We'll be looking at adding shadows when we do our own green screen projects. But one way to do that here, let's see, sun is on this side it looks like, so there'd be a shadow here. When we do that here would be to make a new layer. I'm going to hold Alt and look in here at our layer mask. I'm going to select this layer mask with my magic wand tool, which will give me the nice outline of the person. I'm going to come back to our layer. I'm going to fill it with black. This will be kind of reminiscent of, here's the paint bucket tool under my gradient tool. This will be kind of reminiscent of when we made the shadows in our beach project a long time ago with our palm tree and our umbrellas in the sand. I'm just going to fill it in here. Now keep in mind this is a different layer than the one that I had the person on. I'm going to hit Control T again. We're going to right click and I'm going to head for perspective here. Basically I'm just going to grab this corner and pull it in. Now I'm going to hit scale. I'm going to grab this corner and sort of squish him down. So we got a bit of a shadow here behind him. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to go to filter. This is our first filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and that basically, you can see here what it does. It makes it blurry. I'm gonna up it to like 2%, 3%. Makes it nice and fuzzy on the edges. I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit. I'm going to put this below him. So the shadow is falling behind And the last thing I'm going to do with this shadow layer, and we can double click here and rename it shadow. It's always useful to name your layers so that you can keep track of what everything is. I'm going to change my blending mode here to what's called multiply. Doesn't really show it here very much, but what that means is it basically pastes it on top. If we move the shadow on top, you'll see it sort of like lets it bleed through. And I'm going to lower the opacity some more. But it basically just adds a little bit of shadow here so it looks like, hey, maybe he's on top. So if you happen to pick a person or an object in yours that might cast a shadow, you can add a shadow to add a little bit more believability to your weird fake Photoshop. Make sure whatever you pick, whether it's a person, whether it's a bicycle, whatever you're picking to cut out, make sure it's more detailed than just a rectangle or a circle. It's not worth it to layer mask something out if it's just a simple shape. But make sure you do a nice job cutting something out, pick something funny or interesting to you, and combine two objects in an interesting way. That wraps up our third Photoshop assignment, layer mask. Make sure when you do save it, that you save it as a JPEG in your grade folder.